Hi, so I've done a video on the Cubase chord pads before, but Cubase 13 has really made quite some changes in the chord pad functionality. So instead of focusing on just the changes, this video will present an overview of the Cubase 13 chord pad essentials, so that you don't have to refer back to any of the older videos. So if you don't have a lot of advanced keyboard skills, but still want to play simple and more intricate chords in a very easy way, this video is for you. So let's go! Now the Cubase chord pads allow you to easily play chord pads on VSTi instruments, either live or record them onto a MIDI VSTi instrument track or the chord track. So let's dive right in. So over here I have an empty Cubase project, and you can now enable the chord pads in two different ways. One is you go Project, Show Hide Chord Pads, or you can go over here, you can open the lower zone, and then you select the chord pads tab. So as you can see, I now have chord pads, but when I click them, nothing happens, you don't hear anything. Because to hear them, you first need to have an instrument, so let's create a VSTi instrument track. Let's say that we're going to add a piano sound here. Yeah, this opens Hellion Sonic. Let's open all, and I know there's a nice piano, the Yamaha S90 ES. And if I now click these chord pads, you can hear the sound. Now, if you look at the chord pad zone over here on this chord pads tab, it actually consists of a number of sections. At the top, you find the chord pads zone toolbar. This contains tools and settings for the whole chord pad zone. You have the chord pad zone extended toolbar. This contains tools and settings for individual chord pads and the assigned chords on here. You have the chord pads itself, where each chord pad can have a chord assigned to it, which is played back when you trigger the chord pad. You have the chord pads zone keyboard down here. This shows which keys are played when you trigger the chord pad, and it also highlights the trigger key when you hover over the chord pad, the one in blue. And on the right side you can open the integrated editor assistant that you can use to assign chords, but more on that later. So now that I have a linked instrument track over here, you already noticed that you can hear the chord pads when I trigger a chord pad with my mouse. But you can also trigger the chord pad with your keyboard if you push Alt-K. You get an on-screen mini keyboard, which shows you the various letters on your PC keyboard that you can use to trigger these keys. Q, W, E. Now, if you use any of these ways to trigger a chord pad, they always play at a fixed velocity, which you can configure over here for the on-screen keyboard, and which you can configure over here when you trigger a chord pad with your mouse. However, the best way to trigger these chord pads is via an attached MIDI keyboard. You can basically play the chord pads very loud or softly by how hard you push the key on your MIDI keyboard. Let me show you that on the keyboard behind me here. Yeah, so you have much more dynamic control over how it sounds. Now you just saw me add an instrument track, and then magically when I played a chord pad, the instrument on that track was played. But how does it work if you have multiple tracks? Let me add another instrument track, for example, and let's put a guitar on there. Let's do Clean Guitar VX, for example. And if I play the chord pads now, the guitar is playing the chord pad. So how does that work? Well, basically that's determined by the output mode over here. So if the output mode is on, the output is sent to all record enabled or monitor tracks. So if I select the piano track now, for example, it automatically gets record enabled, and now the piano will sound. And if I select the acoustic guitar track, the acoustic guitar will sound. But I can also always let them play at the same time by enabling the monitoring on both tracks, and now they will play at the same time. Now there's another option in the output mode here, is that you can turn it off, and then output is sent exclusively to record enabled or monitor tracks, where input routing is set to chord pads. So let's turn it off. Now you can see that chord pads are no longer attached to either of these virtual instruments. But instead, I can assign the MIDI input here to chord pads. Now this piano track is directly connected to the chord pads. However, if I select acoustic guitar, you don't hear the piano anymore, because it does need to be either record enabled or monitoring needs to be turned on. So if I turn on monitoring, you can hear the piano, and irrespective of which track I select, the piano will keep playing. Let's set this back to the default and turn output mode on. And I can now also record a part by just enabling record and playing the chord pads on my MIDI keyboard in this case. Now another way to get these chords onto a MIDI track is by just dragging and dropping them. So you get the same sequence that I just played. And in this case the velocity is as it was set over here, 75. Let's get rid of this again. Because another thing that you can do is put chords on the chord track in this way. If we add a chord track to the project, put that on top. I can drag chords on my chord track now. But there is even an easier way now. If we get rid of this again, I can also enable step mode here. And then Cubase shows the step input position over here. And every time I click a chord pad, it adds the chord and moves the bar further. And I can also move the step input with the arrows on my computer keyboard here. If I want to, for example, skip a few bars. Now there's also a insert mode, and that means that if I now, for example, put the step input here right before the C minor, and if I then push a chord pad, it is inserted in front of the other chord. If I turn off the step input, for example, you can see that it overrides the previous chord. Yeah, so all very nice features to play chords with these chord pads or to record chords onto a track. Now before I go on to how you actually get these chords onto the chord pad, if you like this video or find it useful somehow, please give it a big thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm so that it gets spread to more people. Subscribe to the channel if you like these kinds of videos and ring the little bell icon so you get notified when I publish another video. If you really dig the channel, you can support me by using the super thanks button below, which is a virtual tip jar. Or if you intend to buy anything music related or not music related at these stores, please push one of the affiliate links in the description below and I will get a small commission without any extra cost to you. But let's now see how you can actually get chords onto these chord pads. And let's start by first making all of these chord pads empty, which you can, for example, do by using this button, which selects all chord pads. And if I then push delete on my PC keyboard, I get a warning. This operation will remove the chord assignments from the selected pads and cannot be undone. Okay. Everything is blank and I can deselect them again. Now, before you can add something to a chord pad, you need to select it. And then you can get to a chord editor in two places. One is over here. And you can basically say that you want to add a C minor 7 chord with maybe a G in the bass, for example. Another place where you can permanently enable the chord editor is over here in the right part of the chord pad zone. And if I then select another pad, I can, for example, add a D major 7th chord with an A in the bass. Now I can transpose these chords if I want to by selecting another root note, for example E flat. You see that it has transposed all chords on the chord pad because that's what I have selected over here, transpose chords. You can also not select that and then still change the root key. However, that basically just changes the function of these chords, but it does not actually change the actual chords on the chord pad. Now this gets more useful when we also display the function of the chord on the chord pad, which is possible, but which I may save for an advanced video because I think this one will be pretty long already. So let's keep this enabled. You can also change the enharmonic shift so that chords are displayed with sharps instead of flats. Let's leave it to flats for now. And another way to enter chords is by just typing it in text, for example, A minor 7, and maybe put a D7 over there. Another way is that you can assign them from MIDI input, but I need to choose a track with a MIDI input over here, and then you see over here that assign from MIDI input is available. The pad turns red, meaning that it is waiting for MIDI input. So if I now play a chord on my MIDI keyboard, for example an F, it recognizes the F. Now it's also possible that if you already have a nice progression on your chord track over here, which we made earlier, you can also assign the chord pads from this chord track. And there's a nice button over here for that, assign from chord track. So if I push this, Cubase warns again that this operation will change all chord assignments and cannot be undone. Fine. And you can now see that the chords which I had on my chord track are now assigned to chord pads over here. It's also possible to move the chord assignment on chord pads. For example, I can just drag and drop this F to other chord pads. I can also exchange the chords between chord pads by dragging this F to this D. And then you can see that the F and D change places. And I can also copy a chord by pushing the Alt button at the same time and then dragging and dropping. And I have multiple Fs over here. Now it's also possible to select chords to be assigned from other editors. For example, over here we have the list editor, which is showing some well-known cadences. And if I right-click on, for example, the C sus4 over here, I can assign this to the first unassigned pad. I can also just double-click on this one, and it will also assign it to the first unassigned pad. Same thing with the other editor, the circle of fifths. I can right-click a chord and say assign to first unassigned pad, or I can just double-click one and it will do the same. If I want to assign chords from a major key, I can change it to major here. So the root is now C major, where it was C minor before. And I can also change the key over here. For example, go to G without transposing the pads. It will choose the G as a root chord over here, and I can then select chords from the related circle of fifths. Now another way to assign the chord pads is by using the presets over here. As you can see, this has a lot of chord presets. For example, let's choose the Bohemian chords. And this now basically sets the chords for a very well-known song. Now it's also possible to transpose the selected chord pad up or down. For example, like that. Remove a chord assignment by pushing the trash can over here and confirming. And you can also do those operations on multiple chords at the same time. For example, select this one and this one by holding Control and then moving them all up and down like this. And like I showed you in the beginning, it's even possible to select all chord pads at the same time and then transpose them up or down like this, which basically accomplishes the same thing as selecting a root key here, where you transpose all pads and all of them get transposed at the same time as well. So what about voicings of these chords, you may ask? Well, let's dive into that. So let's get rid of the editor here on the right side and select some different chords. For example, modern pop keys. And let's make sure we can hear these. This is how they sound. And the voicings of these chords you can basically see in the chord pads itself by these little white blocks here at the bottom. And when I play a chord pad, you can also see the voicing here on the keyboard. And at the moment, these voicings are consistent for every chord. For example, look at this A-7 here. The white blocks will not change when I play a different chord. However, it may be nice to get a bit more proper voice leading, where you more easily transition from one chord to the other with minimal movement of your fingers, which tends to sound better. Well, you can set the chord pads in Cubase to that mode. If I select them all, and then I enable adaptive voicing on all those chord pads. Now, if you look at the voicing of this A-7 when I play another chord, you will see that it changes based on the chord that I just played. Not always, but sometimes. Yeah, so Cubase basically prepares all the other chord pads for nice voice leading when you play a chord pad. And it bases the voicing of the next chord on the chord that you're currently playing. Nice, right? Which usually makes for a better flow of the chords that you play, resembling how a real keyboard player would play chords like this. Now another option in here is that you can set one chord pad as the adaptive voicing reference. For example, if I want to set this D7 as the adaptive voicing reference, I can click this button over here. And you see that it gets assigned a different border and it says AV here in white. And now the voicing of all the other chords is based on the voicing of this D7 chord here, instead of going by any of the other chord pads that I play. So right now the A-7 voicing over here will again stay constant, because it's based on nice voice leading going from D7 to this one. Now it's also possible to increase the tension notes on the chord pad. For example, for this D7, I can select fewer tensions over here. Going back to a full D and more tensions. I can change the voicing with these buttons over here. And because I have adaptive voicing on all the other pads, you will see that their voicing also changes. To have nice voice leading going from this pad to another pad. Now you can also lock the selected chord pad by pushing this lock over here. And that means you can no longer edit the chord on there. You see that there's no possibility to change it now. And one more thing that you may have noticed is these green, yellow and sometimes red colors here at the bottom of the chord pads. And that's basically an indication of Cubase how well that chord pad will sound after the one you just played. So based on a number of theory roles that you can actually also configure somewhere, but that's again something more for an advanced video, Cubase will tell you whether it's a safe chord to go to or whether it's a more adventurous chord to go to. Let's have a listen to that. Yeah, so it gives you the option to choose a more smooth transition to the next chord or a more surprising one. Now I think these are the essential options of the chord pads in Cubase 13. There is a lot more which would make this video a bit too long, but you can already do so much with these options. So play around with them a bit if you haven't already and let me know in the comments how you like the chord pads in Cubase 13. And also if you want to see that video on the more advanced features, please let me know in the comments and I'll get right on to the more advanced stuff. Now, apart from the chord pads, there's actually a lot more chord-related functionality in Cubase, which I already made several videos about, which I all put in this playlist. So check it out, enjoy, and see you soon.